Hi friends, Mindy here. Today I want to share with you a new journal from Bythewell4god. This is something that they have just recently released, and I know that it had sold out and then they restocked, so I will put my affiliate link down below if you're interested, if you were not able to get this when it first released with the new kit. But this is what they're calling the Disciples Journal, and alongside of it they have released 2 sets of snap-ins that you can use as bookmarks to snap right into the spine. It's a coil-bound system. And so this first set has some has like a ruler along this side, and then you have all the books of the Bible in order, and then you have another one that has almost like a stencil for template if you wanted to do some banners or different things to kind of help you do some creative journaling, as well as one that has a scalloped edge. And another set that they have has some spiritual disciplines listed on here, and then you have this kind of deckled edge. I like this one. I think this is probably my favorite one. And then you have this one that has all of the different shapes that you can use, again, just to create some patterns and things, and they snap right into the binding of the system. You can just pull it out. So these make great bookmarks as well as you're working through your journal, or if you want to set it up and split it up into different sections, so that you could certainly do that and use those as kind of your page dividers. They are going to be releasing different things for this journal along the way. I think they have some stamp sets in mind for future, so be checking that out. Also, make sure you're signed up for the email list. If this does sell out again, they will notify you of restock through your email list. And so just setting that out there. If you haven't joined the email list already, go ahead and do that. So this is the journal. It measures roughly a little over 7 inches by 9, and it has a cover that's kind of like a plasticky type cover. And in the back, they have included a piece of chipboard just to give it a little bit more stability, which I actually really appreciate, so that if you're taking notes at church or something, you can have this in your lap and be able to write some notes there. So again, they're calling this the Disciples Journal. This is white paper that is similar to, I would say, Archer and Olive paper in the weight of it. It's a nice smooth paper to write on. There are 50 sheets, so 100 pages in here that you can use. It's a lightly dot graded pattern on here. And so what I like about that is if you are doing like notes or creative journaling or whatever, those dots are going to kind of fade into the background. You're not even going to really notice them, but it just gives you a way to, if you're like me, I can't write in a straight line. So having the grid helps. Also, if you want to sort of mark out sections, you can do that similar to the way that you would do like in a bullet journal. So you could use this as a planner or a faith planner. So what I'm going to be doing this month is sharing some different ways that you can use this journal, give you some different ideas maybe to do things. I do a lot of types of studying, and so I'm going to share a few of those throughout the month. I'm going to just cover one of them today, but I wanted to share this journal. And in the back, I have already done some pen testing. I always do this in every journal. I do this in my Bibles as well. In the very back, I will always go through and test some of my favorite, most used pens. And I even did some of my inks. Now, some of my inks are a little bit dry, but you can tell there's hardly any shadowing at all because of the weight of this paper, which is really nice. I think I did have a couple stamps that maybe shadowed just a little bit. And I think maybe if my stamps were, my ink pads were actually a little juicier, they may shadow just a little bit more, but I would just encourage you to test what you have. That way you'll know about bleed through, about shadow, about feathering. If you have some inks that just kind of really soak into the paper, you're going to see some feathering and your writing is not going to be as crisp. So it really just kind of depends on the pen that you're using. So my most loved pens, like my Sharpie S Gel, which is what I do most of my note taking with, totally fine in here. I did have one that's like an artist, like calligraphy pen, and it did actually feather just a little bit, but that may not even bother you. So just test your pens. It just, it's also a good idea. You can even use this last page to kind of number out your dots. I do that in my bullet journal for being able to kind of know how I can separate the pages if I want to kind of do that without, you know, having to count all of the dots every time. But that's kind of how my brain works, because I use a dot grid journal for my planner. So I do a lot of, you know, just creating my own kind of spreads, which is why I'm excited about this. And also for using things for like word study journals or verse mapping journals. I have journals that I do that in, but sometimes I actually go through that process a little bit differently than the structure of those journals. And so while I love having them, and they're a great resource as well, I love the freedom of just being able to kind of come in here and take my notes the way that I want to. And so I've had other questions about different ways that you can study and different things. And so I'm going to go through one of those ways today. I'll put you on fast forward here in just a second and do that. But this journal would really be good for all kinds of things. If you're working through the devotionals and you are like me and you like to write out all the scripture, this would be a good way to do that. If you like to do creative hand lettering for verses, or again, verse mapping, topical studies, character studies, going through the attributes of God. There's just a billion ways that you can actually use this journal. The sky is really the limit in terms of your own creativity and how you like to study. You could use it for church notes or scripture writing. Every month, by the well, it has been releasing a scripture writing plan that you could use that coordinates with the devotional for that month. Or like I said, writing out the notes or verses from the devotional that you're working through. He will say this is not mixed media paper, so be careful if you are wanting to try to add anything like water or wet mediums in here. The water, depending on how much of it that you use, it can tend to cause it to pill up just a little bit, which is the case for just this kind of paper. So just be aware of that. It's not to say that you can't do it, but just understand it's not obviously watercolor or mixed media paper. So it's not really designed for that, but there are also always ways that you can work around that as well. So I'm going to put you on fast forward. I'm going to go through a way that you can use this journal for study. And there are also videos from Taryn and Jessa, and so I will have those linked in the description as well. Be sure to check those out, as well as the creative team on Instagram. I know Angela has already posted a post showing some of the ways that she's using this journal, and I believe I have seen Lenora as well. So if you're not following them, be sure to hop over there and follow and see what they're doing as the creative team is utilizing this journal this month. As I have been sharing word studies this year, I have been receiving some messages in my DMs about different ways to actually study the scripture. I've had suggestions for posting videos, and so I thought I would go ahead and do that in this journal this month. And so what I'm using here are the little study bit stickers. I'm going to use these as the headers for this type of study. So I'm starting off, I'm going to just share a very simple study method called the SOAP method, which you probably have heard of before, maybe. But that stands for scripture, observation, application, and prayer. And so you take a particular verse or section of scripture and you work through this process. So the first step is to write out the scripture. Now you can write out just one verse. You could write out an entire chapter if that's what you want to focus on. You can do a particular section if there's one that you just want to look into, dive deeper into, or maybe one that you're struggling to understand, to have a way to kind of dig deeper into it for understanding. So today what I'm sharing is Psalm 40, verses 1 through 4. I study from the King James, and so that's how I have this written out. So I'm going to read verses 1 through 4, which says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. He brought me up also out of a horrible pit and out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock and established my goings. And he hath put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. Many shall see it and fear, and shall trust in the Lord. Blessed is that man that maketh the Lord his trust, and respecteth not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. Now, I have only written the first 4 verses of this chapter. Obviously, like I said, you could do the full chapter if you chose to, whatever kind of section that you really are wanting to focus on. And I really like this method for this process of being able to just kind of look at maybe a chapter or a section, and even working your way through several sections at a time. Kind of if you're wanting to focus, maybe like doing a study on Colossians or something, you could kind of take it section by section and work through as you are studying. So I have my first 4 verses written out. That's the S part of SOAP, scripture. So now I'm going to move on to observations. And so again, I am using one of those study bit stickers. And actually, because I'm writing on over the top of sticker, I'm actually using a Mr. Pen, like the version, it's like a slick writer, but you can write on those kind of plasticky like sticker paper. It also works on their clear transparencies. And so I'm just writing observations on that second section. And I'm taking a highlighter. This is a Mr. Pen highlighter. And I'm just highlighting a couple of things. And what I'm particularly focused on, these are part of the observation section of what I'm doing now, is I'm looking at this section and I'm taking note of certain things. So the first thing that I highlighted with my highlighter was everywhere where it talked about the Lord or it gave the pronoun he, and I highlighted all of that. And then I went through with this gel pen and I focused like on action. So I underlined where that he inclined unto me. He heard my cry, brought me up, set me free, established my goings, put a new song in my mouth. And so I just underlined all of those things. Those are things that I'm observing. So as you're doing this observation section, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. If you see words that are repeated, if you are doing a particular chapter and you see the word faith is repeated over and over and over again, that's a theme that you're trying to focus in on. And so you're just making those observations, what is standing out to you in these verses. Now, this is going to be different for everybody. What you observe is going to be different. So for me, I always like to look for, obviously, God as he's revealed in the scripture. I like to look for things that are commandments, things that I need to do, things that are promises that he's going to do, and just kind of focus that way. Those are the things that I am going to observe, and those are the things that I will circle or highlight or underline or do all of those kinds of things. And this is all part of this observation section. And then I'm going to come through and just kind of go verse by verse and write some things down that I am taking note of in here. And so I'm using those same study bit stickers to kind of do bullet points for each of these. The first one that I wrote is that when I wait patiently, or when I choose to wait patiently, he will hear and attend to my needs. Because waiting patiently is a choice. Sometimes I don't always wait patiently. So the second thing that I'm writing is that the Lord pulls up from the horrible pit we find ourselves in, whether that be of despair or hurt, frustration, depression, but also from the pit of sin that we have found ourselves in. And he alone puts us on a firm foundation and establishes our steps moving forward. And so I'm just kind of going now through the verses of the things that I kind of underlined and highlighted, excuse me, and I'm writing down these observations here. And then the last section that I wrote down is that he causes a new song in our hearts. He causes rejoicing and worship and praise that are all due to him. When others see this change in us from the pit to rejoicing, he will cause them to stand in awe. That's talking about that section where it says that they'll see it and they will fear. And our testimony can inspire others to trust in the Lord. And blessed is the man that trusts in him. And so one of the things I did actually while I was going through this process of observation was I wanted to make sure that section about fear, you can see I have pulled out my Blue Letter Bible app here. I'm just doing a quick word study. So I just went into the interlinear section of my Blue Letter Bible app, and I looked up this word for fear, and it's talking about awe or reverence. It also talks about actual fear, but in this instance, this word is used as reverence. And so this is, the awe that we can inspire in other people when they see what the Lord is really capable of doing in our lives as he's pulling us out of these situations and setting our feet on a firm foundation and establishing our walk and our going in the right way. And so those are just the observations that I am writing down. And again, these are going to be very personal, and these are things that, as any time that you are doing a Bible study, I encourage you to start that time out with prayer. Ask the Lord what he's trying to show you in the scripture, particularly if you're coming up against a set of scripture that you're just having a hard time kind of parsing and understanding and really getting out of it what you are trying to, like maybe you can feel that there's something in there for you, but you can't really understand what it is. Start with the Lord in prayer and let him reveal to you what he wants you to see in this verse. And so the next section of this method, of this soap method, is application. And this is how we're going to apply this to our lives. So again, I'm just putting up one of those little stickers that is just looks like a paint swatch. You could even just use a colored pencil or a highlighter. I just happen to have the stickers, so I'm using those. They're very handy. And I just wrote application in there. And now I'm going to go through and kind of delineate my responsibility and what I can rely on the Lord for. And that's how I have approached this section of application. So I wrote that my responsibility is to wait patiently. Again, because that's something I struggle with sometimes. So I have to remind myself. And then I wrote, this isn't always easy, but it is necessary. My responsibility is to offer praises and worship our God for all of the things that he has done. Testifying of the pit that he rescued me from is a witness to others and should inspire awe and reverence. It causes others to trust in the Lord, and as a result, they are blessed. So, because blessed is the man that trusts in the Lord. And so I did go on because I did read this entire chapter before I wrote down just the first 4 verses that I included. And so I have in here that verse 5 goes on to say that his wonderful works cannot be numbered. And so there's always cause to have gratitude, to appreciate, to be able to look back where the Lord has brought us from and be aware of that. And so, and us being aware of it, we can testify to other people we can see them maybe in a pit of despair or, just of anything really. And we can testify that the Lord has brought us out of that. And so he can bring you out too. And that inspires reverence and causes them to also be able to trust in the Lord. And so the next thing that I wrote is that my responsibility is also to allow him to place me where I need to be and for him to guide my steps. So that it's the way that it's worded is he established my goings. And that's what that means, is that he is guiding my steps. And my responsibility in all this is obedience. And so I just want to do a few little bullet points here down at the bottom. So I'm using these really fun little kind of bullet point stickers that they have just recently done these Bible study bits in a different way. And I'm loving the changes. I love these little circles. And so I went through and just included a few of them as kind of my main things, like the things that I need to apply from this. One is obedience. One is trust. One is gratitude, and one is worship. Those are the things that I'm kind of garnering from this verse, is that I need to be obedient. I need to, let him establish my steps and follow those things. I need to trust him that he is going to provide what I need by waiting patiently. I need to have gratitude, and that gratitude will produce an act of worship that will cause others to have reverence and awe as well. Excuse me. So this last section is prayer. I am going to keep this for myself. I don't really like to include a lot of my prayers publicly, so I will write that off camera. But now I'm just going to go through and use some of these other stickers here, this long washi strip along the bottom, just to bring some color into the page. I've mentioned this before, a lot of my Bible studies in notebooks and things are really more utilitarian than artistic a lot of times, and that's no exception here. I did go back through and add some stickers for some color and some pretty things to look at, but my first primary focus is always to get my notes down the way that I want them. So I added that long strip of washi down along the bottom, and then I'm just going to go through and use some of the mini stickers that released with the kit this month and add those kind of up at the top where the headers are. They have these beautiful florals and butterflies, and so it's not going to be a heavily decorated page. And some of the other types of studies that I will be sharing this month will lean more into like color coding and those kinds of things. But for this method, it's just a very simple way of taking a section of scripture, studying it out, trying to see how we can apply it, observe the things that we need to learn from it. And then you can pray the scriptures back in how, depending, or if there's an area that the Lord is revealing to you that this is an area you really need to work on, you can commit in prayer to working on that. Ask the Lord for help and direction and guidance, and he will obviously provide that. So again, this is called the SOAP method for study. If this video was helpful to you, if you liked it, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Also consider joining my Facebook group, and until next time, bye.